Through September 2022, it is foreseen that there will be an 8.46% chance that the United States will fall into another recession. That is lower compared to the previous month's average, whereas the probabilities have reached 9.46%. Opportunities for the recession in the US predicted a year in advance using the distinction between 10 years and 3 months Treasury rates. But economic conditions are impossible to predict. Before getting further into the video, I'd like to welcome you all to the Money Masters. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos like these in the future. The global economic recovery continues because the epidemic starts anew. The era traces opened by COVID-19 appear extremely persistent. Close divisions are predicted to leaving lasting results on medium-term performance. As in a report stated by the International Economic Fund, global recovery continues, but the momentum has weakened and uncertainty has increased. The global economy is projected to fall from 5.9% in 2021 down to 4.9% in 2022, a 1% difference lower for 2021 than in the July forecast. The downward revision for 2021 reflects a downgrade for advanced economies in part due to supply disruptions, and for low-income developing countries, largely due to worsening pandemic dynamics. This is partially offset by stronger near-term prospects among some commodity-exporting emerging markets and developing economies. Rapid spread of the Delta and the threat of new variants have increased uncertainty about how quickly the pandemic can be overcome. Policy choices have become more difficult with limited room to maneuver. What is an economic recession actually? Generally, an economy is said to be going through recession if it experiences negative GDP growth for 2 consecutive quarters. Recession is a general state of slowing economic activity in the economy, leading to excess capacity, hence higher level of unemployment and further slowdown due to decrease in consumer spending caused by lower wage earnings and heightened uncertainty about the economic outlook. Now let us look at the reasons behind the recession. Broadly, you can divide them into 2 groups. Demand-side factors. Aggregate demand in the economy consists of private consumption, C, government expenditure, G, investment, I, and net exports, export-imports, X-M. A fall in any one component while keeping the other 3 constant will lead to a fall in GDP, hence recession. Supply-side factors. Supply-side phenomenon works through the cost of production dynamics. Any factor which increases the cost of production in the economy can lead to higher overall price level and a curtailed demand, hence triggering a chain reaction by impacting production levels due to lower demand, which in turn leads to lower employment and wage earnings. A negative supply shock can increase the cost of production and increase the price levels in the economy. This will push demand down as they will fall in demand. With the fall in demand, there will be excess capacity in the economy which will prompt slimming down in economic activity. This process might look very complicated, but this is how an economy works. If you're unfamiliar with what's called the business cycle or economic cycle, one and the same. Actually, you should Google it and study it a bit. All economies, no matter how robust their growth, eventually hit a wall where, in effect, demand simply can't grow anymore and full employment has been effectively achieved. Overproduction eventually results in slowing of production, subsequent layoffs, which lessens demand, and a spiraling downwards of the economy fed by a cycle of layoffs, slowing demand, and hence layoffs. The Economist Intelligence Unit, EIU, launched its Risk Outlook for 2022. The file predicts 10 predominant threat factors that might affect global boom and inflation inside the coming year. Let me show you the EIU threat listing. Number 1. The deteriorating US-China courting is forcing a whole crumble of the global economic system. The EIU notes that the United States and China are exerting influences over the sector. In the worst-case situation, this can lead to a nation of neutrality hampering the economic system in third countries, dividing the financial system that helps China and those that support the United States. Number 2. Surprising rapid financial shocks result in damage to the United States stock market. The EIU notes that the disruption of supply chain, excessive electricity prices, risky monetary policy, and an actual stable economic system have all contributed to the sharp rise in US inflation by way of 2021. Number 3. The assets crash in China is leading to a major monetary downturn. The massive debt of China's real property large Evergrande means that capacity failures include an excessive risk of financial instability, the EIU said. Most Chinese actual estate business are similarly effective, which can lead to a sequence of unpaid payments. Number 4. Tighter domestic and global financial conditions derail the recovery in emerging markets. Inflationary pressures stemming from rebounding commodity prices could trigger interest rates normalization, which could feed into higher debt service costs for governments. Number 5. New COVID-19 variants emerged that prove resistant to vaccines. The pace of vaccine rollout is the main variable behind more positive economic forecasts. However, more aggressive vaccine-resistant COVID-19 variants pose a serious risk to these forecasts. Number 6. Widespread social unrest weighs on the global recovery. The pandemic has a significant negative effect on incomes and quality of life, including in traditionally stable Western states and long-standing authoritarian regimes. Countries where political tensions are already high appear to be especially at risk, but so are those whose economies were hit by the pandemic. Number 7. Conflict erupts between China and Taiwan, forcing the US to intervene. Tensions between China and Taiwan have increased in recent months. The EIU says Chinese aggression against Taiwan since late 2020 has raised the risk of a military conflict in the Taiwan Strait, with the potential to drag in the US, Taiwan's backer. Number 8. EU-China ties worsen significantly. The imposition in March of EU sanctions against China over human rights abuses in Xinjiang and retaliatory sanctions from China against 10 EU individuals and 4 organizations have led to a deterioration in EU-China relations. These developments may heighten European calls for EU-US cooperation over China. Number 9. Extreme climate events. The EIU warns that climate change models point to the risks associated with increased frequency of droughts. Intense heat waves have struck Canada and the US this year. Greece, Turkey, and Spain have suffered devastating fires in recent months. And volatile weather, including a drought in Brazil, has already contributed to rising prices for some foodstuffs. Number 10. An interstate cyber war. Given the much higher costs of direct military conflict and the difficulty in identifying perpetrators of cyber attacks, any military escalation is most likely to take the form of cyber warfare. The shutdowns of a national grid, for example, would severely disrupt business operations, creating uncertainty that would weigh on investor sentiment. Job losses from vaccine mandate layoffs could push the economy towards recession, given that 31% of people over the age 18 are not fully vaccinated. The various mandates cover about 100 million workers. Some of those 31 million unvaccinated workers subject to mandates will get their shots, but others certainly won't. In the worst of the pandemic recession, the country lost 22 million jobs. But as I said before, predicting an economic event is impossible. Economies around the world are trying their best to prepare themselves for upcoming recession peaks. Always make decisions accordingly to the economic scenarios. Your savings should not be less than the price value, otherwise, they're useless. Keep an eye on economic situations. Subscribe to the Money Masters and let me know your thoughts and questions about the upcoming conditions in the comment section down below. See you with another great video. Until then.